The Vikings were a group of seafaring people from the late 8th to early 11th century. They originated from Scandinavia, which includes modern-day Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. The Vikings were known for their remarkable skills in shipbuilding, navigation, and warfare. They were both feared and respected for their raiding and trading activities. In this video, we will explore the fascinating world of the Vikings, their way of life, and their impact on the world. A map of Scandinavia appears on the screen, highlighting the countries of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. The Vikings lived in a harsh environment, where the winters were long and cold, and the summers were short and mild. The land was rugged, and the soil was poor, making it difficult to grow crops. As a result, the Vikings turned to the sea for their livelihood. They became skilled sailors and navigators, traveling far and wide in search of new lands to settle and trade with. An animation of a Viking ship sailing on the sea appears on the screen. The Vikings were not just raiders, but also traders. They established trade routes throughout Europe, Asia, and Africa, exchanging goods such as furs, timber, and slaves for silver, spices, and other luxury items. An animation of a Viking trading post appears on the screen. The Vikings were also known for their craftsmanship. They created intricate designs on their weapons, jewelry, and other objects, using techniques such as filigree and cloison. An animation of a Viking sword with intricate designs appears on the screen. In the next segment, we will explore the Viking society, their religion, and their customs. The Viking society was divided into three classes: the Jarls, who were the wealthy landowners and rulers; the Carls, who were the free farmers and craftsmen; and the Thralls, who were the slaves. An animation of a Viking village with people of different classes appears on the screen. The Vikings were also known for their religion, which was based on Norse mythology. They believed in gods such as Odin, Thor, and Freya, and they had a complex system of rituals and sacrifices. An animation of a Viking temple with people performing rituals appears on the screen. The Vikings also had unique customs, such as the practice of blood feuds, where a person would seek revenge for a wrong done to them or their family. An animation of a Viking duel between two men appears on the screen. The Vikings also had a strong sense of honor and shame, and they valued bravery, loyalty, and hospitality. An animation of a Viking feast with people sharing food and drink appears on the screen. In the next segment, we will explore the Viking expansion and their raids on Europe. The Viking expansion began in the late 8th century, when they started to raid the coasts of Europe. They targeted monasteries and churches, which were rich in treasure and easy to attack. An animation of a Viking raid on a monastery appears on the screen. The Vikings were known for their brutal tactics, such as burning down buildings and killing unarmed civilians. An animation of a Viking attack on a village appears on the screen. The Vikings also established settlements in the lands they conquered, such as the Danelaw in England and the Normandy region in France. An animation of a Viking settlement with people building houses and farming appears on the screen. The Vikings also traveled eastward, reaching as far as Constantinople and the Middle East. They established trade routes and formed alliances with local rulers. An animation of a Viking ship sailing on the sea towards Constantinople appears on the screen. The Viking raids on Europe had a significant impact on the continent. They disrupted trade and commerce, and they caused fear and panic among the people. An animation of a Viking ship sailing away from a burning village appears on the screen. In the next segment, we will explore the Viking influence on language and culture. The Vikings had a significant influence on the language and culture of the lands they conquered. They introduced new words and phrases, which are still used today in modern English. An animation of a Viking warrior speaking to an Englishman with English words and phrases appearing on the screen. The Vikings also influenced the culture of the lands they settled in. They brought with them their own customs and traditions, which blended with the local culture. An animation of a Viking settlement with people of different cultures interacting appears on the screen. The Vikings also left their mark on the architecture of the lands they conquered. They built long houses, which were used for both living and farming, and they constructed fortifications, such as the ring forts in Denmark. An animation of a Viking longhouse and a ring fort appears on the screen. The Vikings also influenced the art of the lands they conquered. They created intricate designs on their weapons, jewelry, and other objects, which were later incorporated into the local art. An animation of a Viking sword with intricate designs and a local artist creating a similar design appears on the screen. In the next segment, we will explore the decline of the Viking Age and the legacy of the Vikings. The Viking Age came to an end in the 11th century, due to a combination of factors such as the conversion of the Vikings to Christianity, the consolidation of power by the local rulers, and the decline in the availability of loot. An animation of a Viking warrior converting to Christianity and a local ruler consolidating power appears on the screen. Despite the end of the Viking Age, the legacy of the Vikings lives on. The Vikings were skilled sailors and navigators, and their techniques and knowledge of the sea are still used today. An animation of a modern ship with navigation equipment appears on the screen. The Vikings were also skilled craftsmen, and their designs and techniques are still admired and replicated today. An animation of a modern jewelry store with Viking-inspired designs appears on the screen. The Vikings also left their mark on the language and culture of the lands they conquered, and their influence can still be seen today. An animation of a modern city with Viking-inspired architecture and language appears on the screen. In conclusion, the Vikings were a remarkable group of people who left a lasting impact in the world. Their skills in shipbuilding, navigation, and warfare, their unique society, religion, and customs, and their influence on language and culture make them a fascinating subject of study. An animation of a Viking ship sailing into the sunset appears on the screen. Thank you for watching this video on the Vikings, raiders, and traders of the North.